everyone. I'd like to call to order the City of Oconomowoc Common Council meeting for Tuesday, February 4th, 2025. Has appropriate meeting notification been made?
It has, Your Honor.
Sounds great. Sarah Ninman from the Chamber of Commerce, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
She's like, why am I being called?
Sarah, you look like you were in trouble. Well, welcome, everyone. Would you please call roll?
Alderman Altman Cloth.
Aye. Or here.
Alderman Ellis.
Here.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Here.
Alderman Mulder. Alderman Shellpepper.
Here.
Alderman Maroney.
Here.
Alderman Douglas.
Here.
And Alderman Rosick.
Here. I'd like to entertain a motion for the approval of minutes for January 21st, 2025.
So moved. Ellis.
Second, Mulder.
Comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? On to any comments or suggestions from citizens. Is there anyone in the audience that has a question or comment for council at this time? We have blue cards in the back. Any questions or comments? Seeing none at this time, we'll move on to our committee reports. First up is from Protection and Welfare. Consider act on ordinance 25-01086 to create 9.33 prohibiting sexting by minors within Chapter 9, Public Peace and Good Order. We just finished committee meeting with the Protection and Welfare Committee. It was a recommendation of that committee that we table this item to do a little further due diligence on this topic. I'd like to entertain a motion to table this item.
So moved.
I have a question first. Can I ask a question?
Yes,
first?
go ahead.
Well, if there's a motion, but there's
Okay.
no second, so you're okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we tabling this or are we postponing this to a date certain?
Postpone it to a future date.
Okay, is the date been determined yet?
No,
Okay,
So it would be a table.
it would be a
Okay,
true
yep.
table.
All right.
So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
second, Spiegelberg.
Any further questions or comments? Call roll, please.
I'm sorry. Alderman Altman Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
Alderman Shellpepper.
Aye.
Alderman Maroney.
Aye.
Alderman Douglas.
Aye.
Alderman Rosick.
Aye. Next up is new business, a presentation of the Village Green design, the construction of bids and funding. Mr. Herzog, what do you have for us tonight?
Thank you, Mayor. Ask Lori for a little help here. Thanks. All right, thank you for letting me give a little update with our project at the Village Green. Kind of wanted to bring you up to speed, as I know we've been discussing this for a number of months now. In fact, I look back, I think I started this back in February last year with assembling a lot of the conceptual ideas. And
Can you speak more into the microphone, please, Jason? Thank you.
Sure, no problem. So I just kind of wanted to bring you up to speed as, you know, where we're at with the project. We've been discussing this for almost about 10 months here collectively with the council and a variety of other groups. So we've spent some time right here discussing the project. We've been able to reach out to our community. We hosted 2 public information meetings. We've hosted an online polling and been able to discuss with our groups right here in the local downtown, the neighboring properties. And just as recently, you know, the past end of few months of 2024, we were able to bring a couple of updates to the council. And then right after our December meeting, we were able to bid this project out with a lot of that thought in mind. We continue to work with our architectural board for the bathroom and pavilion structure the last couple months. Last night, Eric Betcher, Mark Fry, and I were able to talk with the park board and kind of bring that whole group up to speed and get their support and their recommendations for a number of things on the project. So right now, we're discussing this project, and then tomorrow, we'll be also continuing our conversations with the Architectural Board. So with all that, I just kind of want to bring you up to speed with the project, remind you of a few of the renderings that we've been discussing. A lot of them should be familiar with you. These are kind of the project items that we were challenged with. We all know the site. We were looking at a variety of different things to try to blend and flex this park into something that's useful for not just one event, but many, many of them and the daily commuters. So we all know the challenges. I presented those in the past, kind of exposed some of those as we move forward. And this was one of the renderings that we shared in December. This is kind of brought forth, and I'll go through a number of these slides real quick. I'm not going to spend too much time on them. If you got questions, you can, we can go back to them at the end, as I just want to present this in a fashion that this is the package, this is the plan that we put together and reached out to the construction community to get construction bids back so that this park could be built this year. So, real quick, this was the rendering we looked at. This is kind of the amenities that we were, and the sites and pieces that we were kind of assembling and putting this together. Not gonna go too much in here. This was the structure that we considered in December. We were able to work with our architectural board and kind of pull some of the theme of this, not really changing a whole lot of the foundational pieces of this or the functionality of it, but making this kind of appealing for an architectural standpoint and trying to blend it in with some of the boardwalk features and many of the other components that kind of surround the park here. So you can kind of see these, and if you will, I'm going to ask tonight, my renderings are just simply showing what we worked on in December and with this building in mind. So this is the current version of what was bid out. This has some of the updates from our architectural board. It has a number of the features and stonework that were kind of incorporated with the thoughts there. So I just ask you kind of keep this building in mind, even though I'm going to show you some of the other images that will have the old style in there, if you will. So that's the front and the back. Some of the improvements with the stonework is really what we're able to work with, and some of the roof lines with the architectural board. Thought many of those things blended well, so I hope that works with this group. If not, we can discuss that. So from here, I just kind of want to go through the park and remind a lot of the components that were inside of this project. As I go around, I'll kind of repeat it a little bit, but a lot of it is going to really stem on improving the waterfront feature with the boardwalk that we have on the south part of Fowler Lake. This is going to extend around the perimeter of the waterfront. We really are trying to focus on some of the gateway features on the intersection corner with, relocating our flag and kind of building a rememberable, honorable section that can be utilized for this component of this. A lot of seating areas, as you can kind of see, that doesn't really exist in our park today. The idea here was knowing a lot of our events are challenged with a lot of vertical pieces like trees and more permanent structures. These are all kind of on a perimeter or outside of our areas that we might have typically put tents in the past. So you can kind of see those. There's a lot of, these are concrete seating areas with lighting underneath. So just kind of going around the horn, some of those pieces kind of blend in there. I thought this is interesting. You kind of, if you can picture yourself along Wisconsin Avenue looking towards the intersection, this project includes some perimeter securing where we have typically put jersey barriers, kind of, the real rough looking concrete barriers on this side of the street to protect not only the vehicles from coming in, but the accidental occasion when somebody might step out into the road during the event. So, kind of picture this as, you're getting the feel of some of the vegetation that can possibly put in these planters and, be utilized for those components and, give you kind of that confinement of the park from the inside. So a lot of room for opportunity there that we're trying to prepare for. This is a huge piece. I wish I had one of my other pictures. I should have thought of this before, is what this corner looks like if you're in the lake looking directly into the corner of Fowler Lake on the park. This is a very rough, overgrown section. We'll be able to clean that up and put these natural stone steps that will go down. This image kind of shows the water, going up to the bottom of the boardwalk. Obviously, it doesn't go up that high, but for a representation, that's what we're looking at. This is very similar concept to what we did at the Rockwell Park. Very nice looking stone that will also provide some of the seating areas and kind of give that open entrance where, right now we like to have our dogs be able to go in that area. So this could kind of be used for that too. Just a couple other quick images. And then, I just wanted to remind, a big piece of this project was to put the seating in there because this is where we are able to get our lighting for the park, where we do not have anything currently. So this is a great improvement. We're spending a lot of time and energy trying to prepare this whole site for power in a lot of different fashions. We've got some very rough looking setups right now. We're looking to improve that to the perimeter of the inside of the park to have a lot of access right at the ground level. It might not look like anything to anybody. There's a lot of work that goes to this project to support that. Obviously, the lighting will be, inside the seating areas, which will, give it a great look for that. It'll be, pretty unique to this area. We'll have all sorts of different options with lighting with the new structure. This is just showing a couple options. So I just wanted to bring that all, kind of that's what we had discussed before. Before you tonight, I did prepare a memo. I know this item is not for action tonight, for discussion, so I'm open to that. And I kind of wanted to present a lot of this thought so that we could all kind of throw that out there and really consider, as I'll go through this and, kind of bring some of this to light here as we are looking at, a very sizable project. So I get the gravity of it. I want this to not be, taken lightly and to really put some good thought towards this. We got some great interest from contractors. Just to kind of give you some background on that, we put this out to bid for a little extended time so that we could allow the contractors to review the project. It's got a pretty intense, building structure to it with a lot of mechanicals that go along with it. So we want a good opportunity in there. We hosted a pre-bid meeting, which allowed the contractors to come in. We sat down with them. They reviewed our plans. They asked questions. We responded. We made some adjustments. We reissued some of the information back to all the contractors to, equally bid on something. The bids themselves, to be honest, they're big numbers, but I'll just touch on a couple of concepts here. Is that the overall bids were very tight. There's a wide margin from the top to the bottom, but those top 4 bids were all within, less than $40,000 almost. So I thought that was a good indication that people got a good understanding of the project, and a lot of people were, willing to bid on this piece of work. So those are types of things I look at before I recommend anything, because, you got some complicated subsurface work as you're looking to build and improve the boardwalk, and that can get exponentially bigger if not carefully addressed. So if I would have saw an anomaly in some of the bids, I would have pulled that out and kind of looked at that better. But knowing and seeing some of those bids nice and tight, that gives me good indication that all bidders were understanding and willing to do that type of work. So we did get 6 bids on this. These are, some of the general contractors that we've seen. Elite Builds was the low bidder on this project. Did some little research from them. They are up in kind of the northeast Sheboygan area. They do a number of projects like this. MSA was our designer. Asked them and their architect to reach out to them and discuss this project with them. And, we got a lot of good feedback from them. So, feeling comfortable with moving forward with that, if that's so be. But just wanted to let you know, we did reach out and discuss with the contractor, or the low bid contractor at this point. There was a couple of alternate bids that were positioned in this project, just to kind of give us some flexibility. I can explain those a little more in detail if needed, but they are addressing the continuation of the boardwalk from what you see here to the north. Again, Elite Builds was the low bid. They did have one of the lower bids for the alternates as well, so that did put them in a good position for being the overall low bidder, but that's definitely under consideration here. So before I move on, is there any questions about the park that I can answer before we go?
Alderman Maroney?
Jason, we went over this last night in Park and Rec, but can you explain the continuation of the boardwalk and how it connects to North Main?
Yeah, let me see. So I'll start with this thing. We have 5 bump outs currently on the south shoreline of Fowler Lake. The attempt here was to mirror those 5 bump outs. We did squeeze a 4th one in here on our property. So the project does include 4 bump outs currently. So if you can kind of adjust your eyes a little bit, here's those 4 bump outs right here. And then the highlighted areas to the north would be a continuation of 1 more bump out and then straight boardwalk, kind of like I've shaded in here as I zoom in. So here's the city property line on the north side of the park. Alternate 1 addressed the continuation of the bump out and the boardwalk. And then right as it starts to get a little narrow with the existing building and the shoreline, it transitions into an 8-foot concrete path. And then that comes around and it wraps in. I'm not showing it on this image, but the crossing, or I should say the sidewalk that goes behind some of the buildings along the channel in LaBelle. So right now what you would have to do in the current state is come here, walk to, in front of the crosswalk right here, cross on the raised crosswalks, and then continue the connection. So that is the alternate. It doesn't have to be taken in this project, but I did bid it out that way so that we could have some flexibility with it.
Yeah, thank you. I just think it's a critical.
Alderman
critical
Ellis?
aspect. Yeah, thanks.
I have 2 questions. One is in reference to the lighting, and the other is to the security barriers. First, I really do like the lighting. I think it's really nice. But as far as the maintenance on that, I know we haven't had snow or anything along those lines, but now winter happens, we have snow. We're going to go ahead and we're going to shovel, whatever the case is. How are we going to be able to maintain those lights?
So I don't have a cross section of it, but it does have a channel under, it has like a lip that it comes up underneath. And those are just the LED pieces of the strip that are exposed, nothing else. And there are on those concealed holes behind it.
So we're not going to have a problem when those LEDs, I don't know if LEDs go out or not, but being able to change them or
Yeah, they're
replace them?
replaceable. Yeah, I don't have more details than that right now.
Okay.
I just know what the thing is designed for. If we move forward with this, they would submit those types of things.
Okay.
Yep.
The other is in reference to the security barriers. Now, are we going to have perennials in there, or what are we going to do? Just, or are they just going to be strictly concrete with,
So there's a couple options. The main component of this will be open planter areas that you can put perennials or annuals or stuff like that we've kind of done with the other pots we have out there. There is maybe a couple of them that I thought would be good with just benches, as we have a lot of parades and people like to sit in this area. That might be a good option as well. They're made by the same manufacturer, so we have both in the contract, and we would just need to pick one or the other. They do have fork picks underneath them, if we wanted to pick them up and move them, especially down in that corner by et cetera there. The thought there was to be able to make those the most mobile ones, and, if there was any need to get in and out of that corner.
Alderman Altman-Cloth.
So actually, on that same topic, I received a phone call from a very sweet constituent last week. Did you?
I did too.
Probably the same one. And she was very concerned that the safety feature was just going to be, concrete blocks. And I told her that we were already talking about some sort of planter, which she was very excited about. Her 2 cents was that she really wanted to see us do more stuff with native plants. And then when I told her that we've already been kind of in favor of the planters, and also too that we want to look at this and it's beautiful and not be reminded of why we have to have it there. So,
Yeah, it's a very passive-aggressive approach to this, is being able to, protect it and it still look good, right?
so, that's all.
Any other comments thus far? Alderman Spiegelberg.
Question that was kind of raised at Park and Rec last night, because I know people will be asking us. The boardwalk extension past Section 5 that goes on to the Rockwell building land, can you explain, because people will ask us, how are we able to do that? So there's been a little bit of confusion on that. Do we actually have an easement for that, or are we still in
So-
the process of obtaining or
I'll
or
turn that,
identifying the fact that we have?
turn to
the
Attorney
easement?
Riffle.
We have an easement across the section up until we get to the Hostetler parcel in the north. We are working with Dr. Hostetler to give us an easement there. We have ordered a appraisal. We're going to go through the initial stages of acquisition through eminent domain, and we will acquire it if you want to.
Okay, so we have this easement already,
Yes?
and we are in the process of acquiring the additional easement?
Yes.
That answers it. Wonderful, thank you.
And acquiring the second easement has been a very positive, constructive, very nice relationship with the new landowner.
Okay, great, thank you.
Alderman Rozak.
I'll get back to the easement issue later on when we start talking about costs, but my couple comments real quick. I like the idea of putting some of those benches in too, like maybe interspersing benches, planters. I think that would be cool. Or pick a section, however you think it's best. In the photo of the back of the, there's a photo of the back of the pavilion bathrooms. The front of it, we have these different kind of style lights, like sconce lights, and then we have these 4 hanger offers. I understand that the architectural committee wanted to add that to create some type of connection to the rest of the boardwalk. I dislike those. I think in the front you have the sconce lights, and then in the back you have these hanging offers. I think we should just go to sconce lights. I think it gives a better look. It's also something that's less easy for somebody to jump up and knock over, or a kid to kick down, or hang something off of, or do something stupid with, or hang on, or jump on. So I would suggest we just go to all sconces. Yeah, and those look fine on the boardwalk.
And they're much higher too.
Yeah, and they're much higher, you can't get to them. So I think on the back of the building, we
Do
should go,
you guys remember the chain and the,
yeah, I voted against that too. When
They
that
aren't
was
there now.
approved. I didn't like the chain. It was supposed to like drip water or
Yep.
something. Is it still doing that?
no?
Yeah, so 12 years later, I was right about the stupid
You
chains.
might have
Yeah.
been sooner.
It was
So,
very expensive.
Other council members, what are your thoughts about the lights? Are you in agreement? Do you care? Do you like it? What are your thoughts?
I do
Alderman
not like.
Spiegelberg?
I guess it will depend somewhat on the cost. I mean, if it's exorbitant to put the same ones on the back, otherwise I like the consistency of it and the thought of, we think that the front is the front, but to a lot of people, the back is going to be just as much exposure as the front.
Right.
And this
Alderman-
rendering doesn't do it real justice because, remember, you've got a lot of this stuff going on the back too, so, it's not as raw as it
Okay,
might seem.
okay.
Alderman
No,
Shellpepper?
I was agree with Alderman Rozik's comments. Can we go back to the planter shot that you had shown? That one. So when you're talking about interspersing with benches, would those be where would those be? I mean,
Right
along the
Like you
road
could
there?
gap them like every other one.
I think that would be nice, because I mean, I think of all the people who line up there for the parades
Yeah,
and do things.
that's
And
what I thought
I
too.
agree with the planters, we want to have the safety there, no issues, but if
I'm
we
gonna
could
look
use
at
benches
weight
to.
and stuff like that to
Yeah.
see if, we're still in the right. They
So
can be
I would-
bolted down.
Yeah, and I'd have a question too for Chief on safety, because when I think of the typical benches that we get, you could probably plow over that pretty easily with a truck. Is there a better bench that would be more secure for that same purpose? I don't know.
I was thinking there would be like.
Bolting
concrete
down, is that
benches.
really enough? I'm just being the devil's advocate here. Maybe something you guys could look into.
I thought we were talking about concrete benches, not
That's the
like,
first thing I
We
thought.
are.
yeah, yeah.
Not iron benches. These
Right.
are the concrete ones.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, I thought they were doing the iron benches.
Right, they
That's why I
just-
was getting
They look
concerned.
real similar, but they have a flat top.
Oh,
Because the iron benches.
Fit on
have
both
been-
sides of them.
Oh, so they're the same as the planters, they're just flat so that you can sit, which is,
Okay.
that's
Okay.
perfect. You can sit on
You can
both
sit
sides
both
for
sides.
parade or for,
I get
Yep.
what you're saying. I get what Shell Pepper's saying. It actually reminded me of when I lived in Wauwatosa. There was a house on 92nd Street, like just north, I think, of Blue Mound, that this house was hit like 2 or 3 times during my childhood. And they actually put like a metal, or not a metal, like a concrete barrier in their front yard. And if a car was going fast enough, it could still get up over. Is that what you're like, are you asking that? Like if you'd still be able to achieve that?
I just want to make sure we can still use Wisconsin Avenue for the parades and,
Yeah.
you know, line it
Yeah,
up.
Well, I
don't
think
want everyone like
Yeah,
this.
that's all.
Jason, the general consensus is we'd like to have some type of bench. And I think if we can just double check that it's the most safe thing with the chief, that would be great.
Okay.
Other comments for council? Okay, you want to continue on, Jason?
All right, so you do have the cost in front of you. This is the overall cost, so I just wanted to be real clear with what was in the bid package and what was the alternatives. There's the roof structure, wrong way. So the roof structure is this piece right here is purchased directly through the city. We would save the time in production and some of the costs that go with that. So, once the project would be awarded, we would go ahead and look at purchasing the roof directly. So that's, in your list here. Obviously, some construction management would have to be considered, so you can see kind of the final totals there. In a minute, Lori will help us through the funding of this. And, yeah, why don't we talk about funding?
Great.
And then I'll finish up with some of the ending stuff.
So as we go through this, our goal is to kind of lay out any ideas, concepts, thoughts. Sarah from the chamber, do you have any comments before we look into funding, unless you guys are going to pay for it all? Okay, do you want to come up to the microphone, please?
Thank you for always hearing me out a little bit. I spend 60.
Can you just identify yourself for
Sure,
the
Sarah
record?
Ninman, Chamber of Commerce, downtown Oconomowoc. I spend 60% of my professional day working on events downtown at the Village Green. I spend 80% of my life downtown. So what I hear all the time is how great downtown is, how great Oconomowoc is, why people move here, and that the event-driven area is really a huge attraction. So I love the design. I can serve beer anywhere on that green. I can set up Fall Fest. I can set up a stage. But what I really want to focus on is the importance to the community of the Village Green and how people utilize it and really are attracted to this area, whether they're a tourist or they live here or they want to live here. So I think it's an important thing, despite, I'm sure, the high cost, but I think it's going to be a great asset for somebody that spends a lot of time down here. Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Murray Sullivan, Sullivan Murray.
All right, here we go. All right, so Jason went over the bids, and we have it just sort of laid out in the spreadsheet so we can take a look at it. So the first part of my spreadsheet has the costs, which Jason already went over, so I'm not going to spend time on that. But we did do is spend some time looking for different areas that we could find funding to help us pay for this. Now, last year, you did approve $1 million from TIF number 4 before we closed that, and those dollars are meant to be used for the gateway section for the infrastructure of the park. We also have $595,000 worth of park impact fees available to use for Village Green. That, of course, will go towards the bathroom structure. Tourism, we looked at the tourism fund, and as you know, their fund balance was getting pretty heavy at the end of the year. So Bob did put together quite a bit of projects for 2025, and we were able to look at about $400,000 from tourism fund balance, which is a really good use of tourism money for this park. And then TIF number 6, which is the Fowler Lake district right here, that has $250,000 available for boardwalk construction and $500,000 available for the parking areas, street area, that kind of thing. So we can bring those funds in as well. The Oconomowoc Downtown Business District has committed $100,000 towards this project, so that's included in our funding scenario. We are also looking at a WEDC grant of about $50,000 that we can use. Now, one of the things we're trying to keep, what happens here is we still have a gap between how much does this cost and how much funding do we have. One of the things to help mitigate that gap was to have actually the contingency part of this, the 10% contingency, funded by the general fund, by our fund balance in there. That's one of those things that we don't really know how much the contingency is going to be for. So this is a good way to kind of manage that. End of the day, after all of the funding available, which adds up to $3.3 million, we still have a funding gap of about $1.7 million. The only way to bridge the gap is to add on to the borrowing that we're going to do this year for streets. So we did take a look at that quickly. Now, when I look at the loan info summary here, what we do with this for our planning purposes is we take this $1.7 million loan. It's going to be a 10-year loan. This is completely straight line, 10 years of equal payments, which is not what's going to happen when Ellers gets it, right? When they put together our borrowing, they're going to feather in with other borrowings we have. The impact's not going to be this high, so we look at this as kind of worst case scenario, or maybe what the overall funding's going to be in 10 years, okay? So if we take a look at that, our annual loan payment, straight line over 10 years, about $211,000, which increases our mill rate about 5 cents. Or the tax increase on our average $430,000 home is about $23. One other funding source that we're looking at is possibly looking at naming rights for the pavilion. If we do that, that could be an additional of about $50,000 a year for 10 years that we would use to reduce the amount of debt service or the effect on the tax rate. If we do that, that mill rate increase goes down about a penny, so it's about $17.57. Or when you look at it over 10 years, $175 per tax bill out there over 10 years. So that's what we're looking at. Now, if we're looking at changing anything in here, the spreadsheet's set up to do that for you. This is currently, do you want me to talk about, I got one, I can see that I got this blank line here. Yeah. So Jason Herzog got
It's the highlight of the night.
It's the highlight.
Literally.
Herzog got,
The best news of the night.
yeah. Jason got some good news from the state today. He's getting exactly $450,000 in additional street funding for 2025 streets. Now, 2025 streets are already funded and budgeted for. We use $1 million worth of levy as part of that street budget. We could, since we have the $450,000 from the state, reallocate that $450,000 from the levy to move it into here. And if we do that, we'll add $450,000 worth of funding here. And that does change, what our funding gap now goes down to $1.2 million, and it does change those. What do we want to call this? Well, I'll put LRIP, but we're not using It's local road improvement funds, but we're not using that money needs to be used for streets. We'll be using street money.
The cash, the
Yeah,
levy
the
cash.
cash for the streets for this, okay? So that's how that changes, and it does help us get down to that 1.2 million. Makes a big difference.
Can you make oh, I'm sorry.
So I think as we go through this, as you see these numbers, we're just looking for feedback. Our goal is to bring this as an action item in 2 weeks, whatever we put together today together to vote on. So there are other things. You can do this in phases. You can do parts of it. There are pros and cons of doing all of those things. And you guys know that very well as you've seen a lot of the projects so far in the city. So what we want to do is minimize the amount as possible. And I want to give a hats off to Lori and her team and Jason and Mark, because this number used to be quite a bit higher on the funding side, and they've worked really, really hard to try to get that number down. And I think I've done a great job. But we can also take things in, take things out. We still have that opportunity now. So my hope is that we can come to some general consensus that we could then, if we need to do any more due diligence moving forward, we can go from there, or we can leave it as you have the number here if we leave everything as is. So there are pros and cons to a lot to it. Alderman Rozak.
So I've got a couple things. One, for the general public watching this, this is the average amount of tax increase on the home, which is $430,000, right?
Right.
Okay. So if your home is less valuable than that, you're going to pay less of that. If your home's more valuable, you'll pay a little bit more.
That's why I put the mill rate amount there. So you take the 4 cents times your value.
And before you made that other change, that mill rate was .05, so we already reduced it. Our mill rate in the city is already incredibly low compared to other municipalities. So, and that's partly because our borrowing is so low as what we're allowed to do per state statute. A couple other things I have to comment on. Alternative 1 and Alternative 2, well, I think that, you know, aspirationally, that was a great idea to extend the boardwalk and the path around. I personally think with the size of the project and how much we're going to tax people for this, that those two portions of the project should be removed. And I have a couple reasons for doing that. One, it reduces the amount of levy per person. Number 2, or per house. Number 2, we have a TIF set up there. So if somebody ever builds there, my strong suspicion is that they will ask for some developer incentive. Most of the downtown buildings recently have asked for some level of developer incentive. I think if we could get a building to build in the rock pit, we would be inclined as a council to offer some developer incentive, which means we have to have a public benefit. If we don't do if we do these now, there'll be no public benefit likely left in that area ever to do in order to give the developer incentive. So instead of taxing people to finish a pathway across a rock pit, and because that pathway won't coordinate with whatever potentially could go in there, potentially somebody wants to build a restaurant there and tie it into the boardwalk so that they have a patio where that people could sit out and eat. I think those two items should be removed. It will reduce significantly the amount of borrowing. And frankly, who's going to want to walk across the rock pit, across a brand new boardwalk? And let's tie that funding into whenever that building and maybe the Lang property next door actually get developed. To me, that makes the most sense. The last big issue I have with it, and one of the reasons I would also promote that is, while we've been told we have an easement across the property, I would not like to have a $5 million project held up in court because someone challenges the validity of that easement. So if someone is so inclined, and potentially a group of investors that has actually in fact sued the city before, were to sue us again to stop this project, that would be their linchpin, is that easement across our property is not valid for some reason. Maybe they have no reason, but they just put it in suit and file an injunction. I think we remove it, we fund it through a TIF later on as needed, if somebody comes in and actually builds there, and then that's not going against our taxpayers directly. So I'm curious, if you remove those, what that bottom line tax increase goes down to. Now we're down to.
Under $1 million.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, but
So I think in the big picture, it would be nice to finish it all. I think the comments Alderman Rozak shared, I think are very spot on with the potential. Whether you're right or wrong on a legal issue, that can still affect how you move something forward. Stan, do you have any comments on that?
Nope.
No comments. So with no comments, I'll go to Alderman Spiegelberg.
Okay, I was going to say also, keep in mind that when Lori's doing the calculations down here, this is like straight line 10 years.
Right.
So when she says that Elders is going to feather this in with some of our other debt, because some of our other debt will mature within that 10 years.
Yes.
Will we have that information before we make the final decisions on this? Because it's not going to be that hard and fast number that we have on here. This is worst-case scenario.
This is worst case.
Will we have some of that information?
Sure.
Okay.
You'll have an estimate, but you won't have the rate, will
I'm
you?
going to, they do need to put together our borrowing numbers for streets and water this year. So I will have him put an estimate of about $1 million in there
Okay.
and give you an idea what that's going to be. And then we'll true up the number after you've made all your decisions. And then should be the first meeting in March, we'll have to do our authorizing resolution for debt.
Alderman Mulder.
Well, I would like to see those Alt 1 and 2 go through at this point. I also think the issue that the raised crosswalk will be 10 feet offset from where that comes out, if we do it now, is a problem. If that went into a TIF district, we could realign that whole part of the street. I don't like the idea of a sidewalk ending, someone having to jog to the left to go across, because most likely, they're just going to go across. It's already a very dangerous area. I don't think there's great sight lines there when people are crossing by splash. So I think I like that because there's more work to be done there that a TIF or when construction does occur there and the street needs to be
Also creates the
revised.
opportunity for that landowner, which we'd like to have them build something that's a nice building there. But we have yet to receive anything to date, at least. I'm sorry, did you have more to say, Matt?
No, it's good.
Alderman Cloth.
Actually, I'm good.
Any other comments? Alderman Shellpepper.
I support the downtown, Village Green City Center, the renovation. I think it's a great idea. The part that I get hung up on is, just that funding gap that we still have. So I'm wondering if in a lot of the projects that we've done in the city recently, you've had this, public-private partnership, and I'm wondering, are there opportunities there for some of the, big donors to be involved with this at all?
There are, the challenging part is that for this to happen this calendar year and to be able to use the TIF money, we have to move the project. So we're showing you the worst-case scenario. There are groups that we're going to reach out to try to help supplement this. But we have to have the worst-case scenario so we don't have to come back and forth in bits and pieces.
It's just tough, because,
So, yes.
Granted, we're less than $25 now a year, which is good, but, just granted with our net new construction, maybe that's gonna be 2%, or, I don't know what that's gonna look like, but, so that's gonna add some on to the property tax increase as well. I don't know what the school district is doing, if
No,
what
and I
that's gonna
don't at
look
this
like,
time
so there's
either.
gonna be an increase there as well, though. So really, we can quickly get up to, $100 tax increase, whatever
Can be
it
that
is
way every year.
in a
Yeah.
year. And so, but this is for a luxury item, like an aesthetic item. It's not a, a critical city service that we have to provide. So I just get concerned of putting this all on the backs of property taxpayers. There's a lot of other people in the surrounding communities that use this area as well. How are they getting involved? And maybe it's not on a municipal level, like we've seen that fail multiple times, but maybe individuals who are, don't live in the city necessarily, but use the area a lot, that are engaged in events downtown. How do we get them to get buy-in on this as well? I think that's the part that I'll have, struggle with over the next 2 weeks to decide is if I really want to, be supportive of putting that funding gap only on property taxpayers in the city.
Yeah, and I think that was our number one concern when the bids came in, because the number was much higher. And that's what Lori and Jay, we really, really pushed hard. By
I appreciate
removing
that.
alternative 1, alternative 2, that gets it down to be a little more realistic. Then if some of the other potential funding sources, which we cannot count on, can come through, we just hammer and knock down the debt right away, so that the impact to the taxpayers should hopefully be significantly less. But we don't want to promise something that we can't guarantee. Yet this is what we can, guarantee as being kind of the worst case scenario. Alderman, I think Alderman Ellis, go ahead.
Well, my biggest concern, and I listened to this whole thing, was the fact that, and I think everybody is pretty much on board with that, is the taxes. This is a luxury thing. This isn't something that's really necessary. And before I could vote on this, I need to know, and I know you can't do that now, but I need to know if there are any big donors out there, anything along those lines that they can come alongside us with this, because, like I said, the Village Green is important. I think it'll look really nice, but it's a luxury. It's not something that's necessary. So
I
I'm really
think
having
it's-
a problem with that.
Yeah, and I think that it's an enhancement of our downtown area, which is really continues the vibrancy. So luxury items, to me, are a Maserati and, something along that line. I think this is something that really enhances the economic growth of our whole community. So I would not use the word luxury. That would be my term. I think that is very important that we do it and we do it well. So with your comment, you'd want to have donors before this kind of came forward. That's not going to happen because there's not the timing of it. Remember, our timing is based on having to utilize the TIF money that we have. And for this to actually happen, to get it scheduled, there's not a good time of the year ever to do this, no matter whether, we don't want to be doing it this year. We don't want, we'll have the same problems next year. So I just want to manage the expectations that it's going to come back with what we're looking at as what we think is the worst case scenario. And we're going to work hard to try to get some additional grants. We're going to try to get some additional donations, things that are not in here at all. And we still have to work on naming rights and all of those components. So our hope is that we can get significant additional support and then pound it down from that perspective. But I don't want you to have the feeling or the expectations that you'll have that in 2 weeks. That is impossible. Alderman Rozak.
Yeah, a lot of great points around the table. It sounds to me like we're in generally kind of agreement that we wanted to kind of do something. Just to the comment of it being kind of, it is, yeah, maybe luxury item is not the right term, but it is kind of a brand new park. It's splashy, it's cool, it's new, but towns that are thriving and continue to thrive, I think, need attractions, need something that people are really going to walk around and use. One of the things I see when I come down to events down here is all the porta potties lined up. We will not need to put porta potties out except for the largest of the large events like German Christmas Market or Festival of the Arts. If you're doing yoga in the park, we're doing beer gardens, we're doing anything else down there, you're not going to need to put out bathrooms. There's going to be 6 stalls for the women, I think, 2 stalls and 4 urinals for the men. We've been asked by the downtown business owners to put bathrooms there for years. We're finally doing it. And after some problems with the other building owner that had promised to put in bathrooms, I think this is something important and really will draw those groups. And look, I think we're going to have even more and more events in this space that's going to attract more and more economic work here. I was curious, well, 2 other things quickly, and I don't want to belabor some of these points, but it was in the memo, we have debt on the community center coming off in 2031.
I believe
So,
that's true.
so for when we actually fund this next year, we'll only have another 5 years-ish while we're still paying the community center off. So you're going to have this, again, to the point of feathering in the debt. Even whatever that number is it's ultimately 13 or 7 or 8 or 10. In 5 years, it's going to be probably back to less than that once the community center goes off. Because I think we're paying 240 grand a year for the community center.
Yeah, I don't have the exact number, but what I do know, and we've talked about this a lot of times when we talk about the capital projects, that is what we do. We feather the debt in, and the purpose of that is to keep the levy for debt as stable as possible.
And the community center was a much larger loan. It was a much larger project with almost the entire amount, I think the 8.5 million all taken out in debt. We're only going to take, if we keep this number around $1 million, we're only talking about $1 million in debt. That once that community center drops off in 31, people are actually likely, unless we do more spending debt, we'll see a tax reduction or a mill rate reduction. The only other thing I'd like to see us do potentially, if we can, if we want to reduce this even further, we've got a contingency funded by the general fund of 406. What if we bump that to 506? What if we bump that to 606? We have a lot of reserve money in our general fund. I know, but I know.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't make me nervous.
But I mean, I'm just curious what it looks like if that goes to 506. Because, and here's what I wrote down. So between the 10% contingency for the overall project and construction management, that's $780,000. If we beat the contingency and we only use 5% of the contingency, or God forbid, the world falls apart, it's Armageddon, and we don't use any of our contingency, and we keep that construction management number down to a reasonable number, not 250, we could see another $400,000 to $500,000 shift in these numbers if those things, I mean, again, 10% of the overall is about 406,000. If we only use 5% of it, that's another $200,000 savings there.
Well,
So-
But that number's not in the loan calculation.
Right, because we're using the GI.
We're
Right,
using
'cause we're using
contingency
the
for
GL.
borrowing for
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
So
And
there-
I went ahead and put 506 in there. I know when Mark and I talked about it, we talked about being comfortable in about the $500,000 range.
Okay.
For
Oh, wow,
that.
look at, it's like I read your
Yeah.
mind.
And
I
so
asked
can
for more.
Yeah.
They said no.
The mayor said, find me 200,000 more.
Okay, so let's, just looking at the numbers we have right now in front of us, you're talking about an average tax increase per house of less than probably about 92 cents a month increase. That's if we don't get the naming rights and we don't get any of this other possible funding sources. For a project this transformative for our community, I think it's a good price. And I'm not I've voted against budgets over the years that increase taxes. This to me seems like the smart and wise thing for us to do, given that we have a TIF that's expiring, we have park impact fees to use and other things to use.
The other thing is, we also have to realize is that part of our strategy, at least in the last several years, is to have the additional growth. And that builds that tax base. It doesn't increase our taxes, but it continues to spread it out as more of these things come online.
True, it does.
So those little things have a significant impact over time. Doesn't mean we spend money unwisely, but I think Alderman Rozak's comments are really spot on. Alderman Cloth, you've been waiting patiently.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
actually Rozak hit on a few of my points, but when I originally looked at this and it was almost a $2 million gap, that was almost kind of a hard no for me. But seeing how we've kind of dwindled this down in different ways, definitely a lot more comfortable. But kind of going off of something that Alderman Shellpepper had said and kind of made me think about it, there's so many things within our city over the last couple years that we fundraised for. And, we've talked about this, Mayor and I, about just the fundraising fatigue that we're kind of starting to hit. And you look at some of the different things that we fundraised for, and I hope that I never have to come into contact with Gabo. I hope I never have to deal with, he already jumped on me once, but, I promise I didn't have anything on me. Or even like the dog park or, just different things that we've used. But Village Green is something that really, truly everybody can have access to. So when you look at all the hard work our community has done fundraising over the last, decade, to kind of give us something nice that we don't have to, we have to pay for it, but don't have to work for. But then going on, I think, this is what you had said that made me think this. I would totally get behind this and support you on this, Sarah. That, maybe at the beer gardens or, Fall Fest, you prove that you're a city resident. Maybe your $7 beer is $6, or your hot dog is $2 instead of $4. We could easily make up that $12, in just one event. So,
I like that idea.
yeah, I do too.
I like the idea of District 4 in a dunk tank. Anybody else?
Oh, I will happily throw the first ball at Alderman Ellis.
Whoa, wait.
Again, I'm not even gonna throw the ball, I'm just gonna.
So you guys did a great job. Let's put your number back on the contingency fund.
This one here?
Yeah, let's just put it back just so it's back to where it
400,
was.
460.
And then let's see if there's anything we can do. Because the request is, okay, can we add another 100,000 out of the general fund? Let's figure out where and whether that's doable. To have council understand, we've been talking about this for several weeks on how much money to use in the general fund. And they keep hearing me say, well, no, well, how about this much? I need another 100,000. My last request was 200,000 to get that down. So I think what we're hearing, Lori, for you and for Mark, is can we add that additional 1,000 to get this to the 872 number?
And I think what I said was, when Mark and I discussed this, we decided 500,000 was our number. And it was almost until you took out these alternate bids, because the contingency's 10%. So when 10% used to be more, I think that number in there was for. 59. It was, I probably don't have it on the old one. I have to put it all back to get that number, but I was thinking it was 480, somewhere in there.
The other thing that we looked at is in the management fee and the contingency, can those be smaller? Can those be less? So the staff has tried to work on different ways in which we can partner, utilizing staff resources as well as outside sources. But that's really hard because we only have a certain amount of capacity and we have a boatload of projects going on all at the same time. So they've done a lot of those things, and I want you guys to know that, as well as anyone that's listening, that we're really trying to pound that number down, because I think we all agree that the lower the gap can be, the better.
Yeah.
Without
So, I mean, that's really,
compromising.
a council decision, if you want to use, for contingency for the general fund. Mark and I discussed 500,000, and then he asked me if it could be 6 or 7, and I said, I really think 5's our upper limit on that, because we use that for the capital projects going forward, and we don't want to lose that.
Internal funding, whole thing.
Yeah.
Wow, good work. That was a lot.
So the question I want to just make sure we have clarity on, we've removed alternate 1 and alternate 2 above here. Can we just have a straw poll idea? Is there anyone that's against that and feels strongly that we should try to put that back in at this stage?
I think that we should try to put it back in.
Okay,
I'm not a hard, yes, we've got to keep it in.
okay.
But I think we should try to put it back in. I
So-
think there's a lot of benefit in connecting that at this point.
Yep.
And maybe even an attraction or benefit to anyone who may be developing those 2
Okay.
separate properties there. I
Okay.
mean, I would consider at some point, is anybody else in agreement?
Yeah,
with
I agree with Karen too. I think we should really give it a shot here to try and connect that. I know,
Well, the basically thing is it's going to cost more money, and you have to decide if you're willing to put that on property tax owners. That's really what it amounts to, because I don't see much more that we can add to this other than external grants and donations, which we will not have the time to build those at this stage,
Well, another question on
unless you have
that-
an idea.
Okay, another question on that would be, if somebody comes in and they're going to use a TIF to develop that property that's there now, obviously, we could get some public benefit for that.
Sure.
But someone may come in and decide they're going to develop that property and they don't need a TIF from us.
Correct.
So then if we try to do that boardwalk and make that connection at a later date, it's going to cost 2 or 3 times as much to do that at a later date. I just think that's something we should consider.
Well, I think that's a fact, that it's going to cost more if we end up doing it down the road. The challenging part is we don't know.
Yeah.
Mayor, just
Yeah.
one question. When can we see those donor numbers? I know you said we can't do it in 2 weeks, but when can we realistically see some real solid
Probably
donor
not till
numbers?
summer,
Summer?
when the project's going. I mean, people are happy to do different things when they say things are going, but we're going to ask you for a vote, yes or no, in 2 weeks, so this project can get going. There are some tentative schedules already built up. Once you approve this, then we're going to be working with the chamber and all the different events so that we can try to get things scheduled in the proper time. But my recommendation is that you make that decision assuming we get no more money. If you do that, then I think the additional money would be good. Attorney Riffle.
I need an answer now. Could you put up that slide about the area that goes around the lake?
Am I going the wrong way?
One more there.
Oh, there we go.
There you go. The gray area there, I have been directed by staff to get an appraisal. We have not signed the appraisal agreement. If we're not going to go forward with that, I would like to cancel that immediately. We will not incur any cost if we're not going to get an appraisal.
So
I
I
have
would,
already engaged with the lawyer for this gentleman. He otherwise would be agreeable to just, work with us and give it to us, but he thought that it would be reasonable for us to get a appraisal and find out what the value of that is, which is his right. So if we're not going to pursue that, and if we're not, if we're gonna pursue it now, that's fine. If we're gonna pursue it later, that appraisal will be no good to us 2 years from now.
So my suggestion, respectfully from a policy standpoint, is we continue to move forward on that and try to acquire that easement irrespective, which will give us the option in the future, because we have no idea where it's going to go. So I would rather, and I'd recommend to council, that we continue with that process, obtain the easement if it's agreeable in a friendly manner with that landowner, and then from that opens a door, no different than how we did the Oconomowoc Parkway, is to always have that option available.
Dr. Hostetler has been extremely good to us.
Yep.
He
But who
knows us.
knows who's going to own that in 2 months, 2 years, 20 years? So I appreciate the question, but I think that's a policy decision, which is
is.
what he's asking you for. My recommendation, unless there's disagreement, is to continue that process. Is there anyone that does not agree with that or wants to voice a different viewpoint?
If I'm understanding what Stan is saying, if he moves forward with this, but then we decide not to put this through. In
Correct.
2 years, any work that Stan does right now
No.
doesn't matter.
We're trying to
No.
get the
What you're
easement.
saying?
No, we have an easement on the, whatever that color is, I don't know.
I don't know either.
We don't
Kinda
have an easement on the
Orangey
gray.
brown.
Okay, so you're asking for guidance to just get the easement.
Get the
Correct.
easement.
Okay,
while
that I'm
we have
okay
a
with, yes.
very cooperative individual.
Okay, then yes, absolutely. One
Okay.
thing, though, I will kind of add, that I'm not okay with putting the boardwalk or cement anything through here, because why should we spend that kind of money? And then regardless of who owns this land, if they're the greatest people in the world or the most horrible people in this world, if this gets developed at some time, couldn't that construction potentially shut down that walkway?
No.
Or even cause damage to it while they're
We have an
doing it?
easement,
have an
they
easement.
cannot obstruct our easement.
No.
Even during construction right there?
No, they cannot take any action that obstructs our easement for full passageway.
Would it ever
We
be a
can work
safety-
with them to say
Yeah.
temporarily.
We can temporarily shut it down,
Yeah.
but they can't. We can.
Cause safety issues while there's construction going on, having people walking right up along them?
Hypotheticals as to what's going on there.
I don't think we would allow that to happen. We have permitting rights.
Yeah.
There's safety scaffolding that they could put over top
Top
of
of
it
it.
to let you walk through that area
Yeah.
during construction.
True, good point.
So my general consensus is is most likely alternative 1 and alternative 2, unless we can find additional money, are probably not going to be voted on. That's completely up to what you guys decide. We're going to leave them in as options for a couple more weeks. Lori and Mark are going to work to try to find some more money, try to see if we can get that gap lowered. And so thank you very much. Any other questions or comments with regard to this item? Great
know,
job,
I have
everybody.
one
Great
comment.
discussion. Great discussion.
I highlighted this and it's supposed to be purple, looks pink. TIF 4 funding. We want to make sure that if we want to use that $1 million, we need to have this year. TIF 4 expenditure period ends in September of this year.
Gotcha.
And the construction will be throughout the summer, so we wouldn't have usage of this in the summer, is that correct?
Mark?
Jason
Or
can
Jason,
talk
talk about that.
the construction thought process.
I think we're done.
I think we're done with Lori.
Yep.
Thanks, Lori.
You're out of here.
As she runs away.
Almost got her to complete the construction.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to wrap up with a few things, and one of them was the construction, kind of the staging of it, real general, real general. What I'd like to do is, discuss with the contractor. Upon bid, I did request them to submit a schedule with a few things in mind, and obviously our 150th anniversary is one of them, and then we have a variety of other events that go on during the summer. And I don't think it's any secret, it's gonna take some disruption. And will impact a number of things throughout there. The idea here is to probably move this construction into basically 2 phases. One's going to be kind of, if you guys remember the fencing when Rockwell first laid down, it kind of shut down the north part there. It'll kind of be similar to that in the early part of the spring. Allow them to start work on the building, the boardwalk, you know, some of the utilities, maybe even the bump-in parking. These are just real general things. And then when our events start to come, we've asked them to kind of pull that back, just confine the construction zone near the building and allow the park to be used. And we might flex back open once the events are complete and start to work on it in that fashion. So it might be an accordion type phasing, but, you know, we're trying to, you know, make that manageable. So we put a couple of conditions in the contract so that that can, you know, somewhat be managed. Again, I want to sit down more thoroughly with the contractor and have those thoughts, but that's kind of how it's phased right now.
And then we're working directly with Sarah and the chamber, and we've been in communication over several months along with Paige as well, so that we can do our best to have the least amount of disruption. We looked at this multiple times, postponing it, doing things we can't postpone because of some of the financing components you know about. But also, no matter when we do it, it's still going to be a disruption for something. I think the thing that I would recommend to council is what we do well, and we get it done this year, that we don't end up with multiple phases over multiple years, and then all what happens is the prices go up, and then we come back for budget amendments and all that stuff. Let's do it well. But please, if you have questions, please reach out to Mark, to Jason, to anybody on the team here, because we do want this as an action item in 2 weeks. And then we will be meeting with a lot of the people that are affected in that area so that they know all of our timelines. But the tentative ones are set up, but we just didn't know where to go until we talked with all of you. Fair enough?
Fair.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Just the
Comments?
last thing, it's in your memo here, but I just wanted to share with you, Eric brought this project to Park Board. The other item in that meeting was also kind of the idea of taking the opportunity as the park is transitioning to rename that in some fashion. So Park Board was following their procedures and naming rights, and their recommendation is we'll move to this body.
What is it? What?
Alderman
We do any
Shellpepper?
kind of contest, I mean, with the
Yeah,
school
on
district,
how to
with the
do it.
kids, I mean, could we
You have to
make
talk to
this,
Park and Rec. They're kind of driving it to begin with.
Yeah, Park and Rec is driving it, however, that was an idea that was brought forward as well.
Yep, that was their recommendation so far. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Great comments and great discussions. Mark, do we have any staff reports tonight?
No, sir.
Any comments or reports from any of the aldermen this evening?
Yeah.
With no comments seen, there are no comments from the mayor other than have a wonderful time, and we're going to go into closed session at this time. So those of you that are here, thank you for coming. And after closed session, we will close the common council meeting. So the closed session per Wisconsin State Statutes 19.85 stats conferring with legal counsel for a governmental body who is rendering oral and written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation involved, specifically the discussed litigation involving the city, the village of Lac La Belle, the town of Oconomowoc, pertaining to the intergovernmental agreement between the village and the town. I'd like to entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved, Altman Clove.
Do I have a second? Second. Call roll, please.
Alderman Altman Cloth,
Aye.
Alderman Ellis,
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelblum,
Aye.
Alderman Mulder,
Aye.
Alderman Shellpepper,
Aye.
Alderman Maroney,
Aye.
Alderman Douglas, Alderman Rosick.
Aye.
We're now going to go into closed session. We're going to go into room 3, which is all set up. And we will adjourn the common council from